they're also not like talking to each other anymore, which I think is interesting, but like nobody talks to each other.
Hi, Vanessa. Why don't you say some more about that? You were just saying nobody talks to one another. What do you mean? Are they on their phones?
Should I say, hi, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cheaper
Like,
Than
would you like to
Therapy?
be professional and say welcome back to Cheaper Than Therapy? Oh, sure. Yes. Thank you for saying
The
that.
number of times y'all just come in at the middle of our conversations. This is what it's like when Dene and I are talking. We're like, oh, right, we should probably hit record.
We should record this. Yes.
We should record this. So what we were talking about before we hit record was how I just got back from throwing my little sister's bachelorette party this past weekend because I am the matron of honor. And
Aw.
so when I say little, I mean much younger. She's 16 years younger than me. So she's 25, as are most of her friends.
Mm.
And going into the weekend, I was very much like, pray for me. I got to hang out with an entire weekend with 25-year-olds. I don't know if I'm going to survive my old ass. And what I said to you first, and I've said this to a couple people, is how shocked I was at how not partiers they all were. Um, and I was saying, like, I had read an article that was talking about how Gen Z is the most sober generation of any
Mm,
generation we've had, right? And you said you had seen something similar about how alcohol sales are down like more than they've ever been.
yeah.
But in the same article, I saw that millennials are the drunkest generation we've ever had, in which a lot of people's responses were like, well, we've kind of been through it. Like pretty much every couple years of our life, there's been some massive world, like global issue. Like the world
Mm.
feels like it's burning down around us, right? And so I think our generation has tended to maybe need to anesthetize a little bit more than others. I don't know. But yeah, I'll tell you, it was very interesting, like case study to be in that. I mean, we were in bed by midnight both nights.
Mm.
Um, I'm thinking, let's go to brunch. I said, oh, look, they have $30 bottomless mimosas, which like at 25, every one of us without even asking would have been like, yes, please. And everybody was like, meh, I'll have a Coca-Cola. And I was like, what is happening?
Aw. I'm smiling so big my face hurts. This just like thrills me no end. First of all, that your sister's 25 and getting married. I feel like she's always been the most like mellow soul. Like, so I don't know why you're surprised that she was like buck wild and wanting to party because I don't feel like that's ever been her energy. But
No.
also, so millennials, because I feel like you're always my reference for this. Millennials are what, your age group? Because I'm
Yeah,
not
so I'm considered an elder millennial,
oh.
which they call us, which is so lovely, right? So nice, kind of like a geriatric pregnancy. I've always been the geriatric in everything that I've done. So I'm an elder millennial. So I'm pretty sure, I mean, look, and it depends on what study you look at, but the
Mm,
millennial generation goes until some studies say like, so I was born in 84. I think it goes until like 81,
okay.
80 or
Mm,
81 is millennial. And
mm,
then, so you would technically be Gen X, right? Like you're like a young Gen X. And John's like a little on the older side of Gen X. And it goes until, so my brother's also a millennial. So millennial's the biggest generation as well. So
mm,
it goes until I think like mid 90s, like 95, 96, something like that. Well, no, actually, I guess if Gen Z starts in 2000, so it would go until 99, right? And then then I can't talk. And then Z starts in the year 2000, which is when Shelby was born. So I don't know. That's a lot of people to be documenting, but apparently we're the drunkest of everybody.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I did see an article that said that alcohol sales are down, and that struck me. I just would never have assumed that. I think certainly in our circle of the world and living in, the West Coast, or maybe just people that are a little bit more into wellness and
Hmm.
health, it doesn't feel like there's a ton of binge drinking that's normalized. Like I mean, and this is, older, but I can't think of the last time when I was out and I like saw um someone I was hanging out with, like, drinking excessively, like, ever, like, that never happens. It's like, you'll have a maybe 2 glasses of wine if you're out and we have a drink, and so, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, I guess, but also, I was very surprised to hear that, but I love it. This makes me feel hopeful for, our kids' generation that, I think there was so much of, like, what kids used to do was drinking was entertainment. Now, there may be other addictions that have replaced that, right?
I think that's part of it too. And I also think, I guess, I mean, and I don't have the article in front of me to reference, but I would be curious to know, you can't you can't look at something that has changed in society in a vacuum, right? It has
Mm,
to be considered with all of the other things that are also changing in a society or in a generation. And so while I would say yes, like it seems like potentially Gen Z is not anesthetizing in the same way that like my generation was, there's also a lot of changes that I wouldn't consider positive
mm,
changes, right? That have happened to that generation. So like they don't they don't engage with other humans as much or in the same way, for example, right? Because they grew up on social media. They're the first generation to fully grow up with social media, right? So for me, it came out late teens.
mm,
And so there's been documentation of the impacts of that, right? Like the social impacts of that, the empathetic impacts of that. Like
mm,
I saw some research, I'll have to find this and put it in the show notes, but there was a study I saw forever ago that they were actually showing like lower levels of empathy, for
mm.
example, because they're not having face-to-face interactions as often, right? Even when they were in school, a lot of it was online, right? And then we've got COVID, obviously, that happens. But so I like, there's part of me that's like, yes, I love that. And then there's another part of me that's like, what is that connected to? Right. Or is it, or how is it connected to the fact that they're not like seeing their friends in person anymore in the same way? Right. And so is that why they're not drinking as much? Is it really that they've become more enlightened than us and they don't need it as much? Or is it because they're not actually hanging out as much? I don't know, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I think there's probably I've been watching this show while I'm running The Shy. Have you ever seen that show?
Mm-mm.
It's actually really good. But they like it's so normalized that the kids are all just stoned all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like so I'm like that's fascinating that that's and I do think that that's a part of it. I think that there are other drugs that are maybe sort of like the normalized way of interacting, but I think you're right that it's probably the social lubricant factor isn't maybe there if we're not being super social with one another, but there's certainly a lot of gaming and just screen time in general. And oy, yeah, I and it's so like I don't know, it's like we're comparing and like the old people like in my day we
I
used to
know.
like I was trying to tell my kid that we used to like all meet at Quick Pick, which was like the area, like the gas station because nobody had phones. And so
Yep.
you just went to Quick Pick and you knew everybody was going to be there and then we would decide whose parents were out of town and where we would party. But the kids today don't have any of that. So they're just like texting each other from home probably and not leaving and looking at each
So,
other's
like a good
socials.
example, right? So, one of my sister's best friends that was there, that they've been friends since she was like 12,
Mm.
they met on Instagram when they were 12.
No,
Yes. So,
that's
like,
crazy.
OG, right? Like, way back in the day. And you know what the funniest part about this is? They met because, okay, they're 12. They both were on the same One Direction fan page on Instagram.
Loves
I
it.
know. And so
That's
like
amazing.
one of them saw one of them commenting on something, you know what I mean? And then they started like talking to each other about One Direction and then they became
Aw.
friends. So she's from Canada, where my mom's in upstate New York, right? And so they just got super tight. Like they were talking all the
Mm.
time. And so finally, like both the moms like drove them, met in the middle in Buffalo and like drove them to meet. But of course, my mom was like, we're going to meet in a public place. Like, I don't trust that this person is real, right? But I mean, nowadays meeting online seems like nothing, right? But my sister was like paving the way at 12 years old.
Wow.
But I mean, look, we could probably count on, I don't know, two or three hands the number of times that they've actually spent physical time together, right? In the past, let's say 13, 14 years, however old they are now, which is very different than how we were meeting our friends when we were kids, right? So even that, I'm like, I don't know. It's just, and I suppose what I'm thinking is as I'm working with Gen Zs,
Mm.
you know, I have some clients that are Gen Z and I see how their struggles are different
Mm.
than the struggles of like, let's say the millennial generation, right? Um, I think there is more social anxiety. When I was working with the adolescents, when I was in my internship, the social anxiety that I was seeing was very different. I mean, they're the most anxious generation, they're the most depressed generation as well.
Mm.
So, like, what's the connection there? You know,
Are they more anxious and depressed, or are they
are we
just
labeling?
anesthetizing it less, right? Like,
Mm,
I was such a socially awkward kid,
yeah,
but I didn't know that until I was a little bit older and started doing therapy and had names for things. And when I started, like, actually having to feel my feelings, because I wasn't, I mean, I started drinking pretty heavily pretty young,
me
and just
too.
that it was just like such a normalized thing to do to be like, we're going to a football game, like, and we're gonna be, wasted. But it's like that's such a developmental space of like, how do I feel in my skin in, these interactions or in relationships? And so maybe they're just feeling more than we did. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, feeling more, but also are they putting, I suppose, like the lessons that they are learning, are they actually putting them into relational practice?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
right? They all have the language, they all have the labels, I mean, this was the thing that would get passed around in the high schoolers, right? Like they would pass around their labels and their diagnoses almost like a badge of honor, right? Like everybody was anxious, everybody was depressed, right?
When you were a kid, or the kids that you
The
see?
kids that I was working with, right?
Okay.
And so the kids that I would say were like the Gen Zs, right? When I was an intern as a therapist.
Hmm.
And it was so interesting to me that that was what they would use as like their badge of honor, right? Was like their
Hmm.
diagnoses and their therapy speak. But then when I would see them engage with each other, it was so fascinating because so often I would see like a lack of, again, empathy, a lack of an ability to like relate to each other. That I'm not saying, look, I mean, obviously we're speaking very generally here, but I would just say it was different than what I saw like in my generation growing up, right? And so it's just different. It's a different beast, right? Or like, okay, so not to totally birdwalk, but when I was
Mhm.
still in corporate, the younger people that were coming in were these Gen Z, right? That were kind of right in the cusp, like young millennials slash Gen Zs. And even the way that they would show up in the workplace was totally different. Now, look, in some ways it was great, right? They were not willing to like do free labor. They were kind of calling shit out. They were calling out like toxic work environments. Honestly, I will give that to Gen Z. That Gen Z is one of the ones that was like, oh, fuck this. Like, we're not doing this anymore.
Hmm.
But at the same time, there wasn't a lot of like camaraderie, teamwork, like, okay, we're in this together. Let's all like roll up our sleeves and do the job, you know? There was a little bit more of like well, this doesn't work for me. And so I'm not going to do it. Right.
Entitlement. Is that the word you're
Is
looking
that maybe that is the word, right? And so again, like I don't want to generalize an entire generation, but in managing them, this was the
for?
conversations that we were having, the older kind of managers, like this is a really hard personality structure to manage because there was not a lot of teamwork, I guess is where I'm going with that, you know? And again, I say that, I keep saying this over and over again, like I know we're speaking in general terms, but it is just like interesting dynamics to witness and to just wonder like where is this coming from?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like it's interesting for us to sit down and do the comparison side by side and say like what was better or worse, or I don't know. I know I was telling you I was watching a reel that Scott Galloway was talking about how he feels like young men need to drink more and that they should, like use that social lubricant to get out there and talk to girls more and all of the things that, in his generation were just a lot more normal. And I was like so shocked. And I was like, that's problematic on so many levels. And um, I don't know, like, I think there's, like, this clip that's going around, like, the '80s miss you, and it's all the things that we used to do in the era. I guess I was pretty young in the '80s, but, like, '80s teenagers used to do that kids would never do today, and I do think there's a way of, like, working out some of the social what's the word I'm looking for? They just don't have any social negotiation skills
Mm-hmm.
anymore, right? Like I wanted to keep my kid in like the structured after school program forever. And it was actually my mentor that was like, you need to just let kids play. Like you guys were out
Mm-hmm.
in the streets, like they're fine. And they don't have any of those skills of like, yeah, some kid's gonna fight one kid and then they're gonna like work it out and they're gonna
Figure it
learn. And
out.
yeah, and some of those things are actually initiatory processes that we've sort of taken away from young kids. And I think certainly, yeah, again, I'm probably that parent that's like, they're not drinking. Wonderful. At least I know that they're safe. I know what they are. But there are probably some things lost in that lack of struggle. And in the lack of struggle of not having to like, I don't know, work at a job that pays you nothing and pay your dues for a while because we had to, right?
That's right. That's right. And again, it's not like I'm not trying to do the whole like, well, I was abused as a kid and I turned out fine. Like I'm not going there. And also, yeah, I mean, I think that there is like you said, I mean, there's some initiatory experiences that we've really robbed of our children by
Mhm.
making things a little too easy for them, right? I mean, even now, like my kid now, it's like she, her first instinct, she's playing with a lot of other, by the way, only children. which there's
Oh.
been a huge increase in that too, which that even of itself to a certain extent takes away some of the struggle of
Mm.
being a kid, right? Of having to like fight with your siblings for attention, fight with your siblings for things and for resources, right? Um, and so a lot of the only kids that I'm watching her, she does this thing where she comes straight to me. There's any kind of
Mm.
disturbance or argument or whatever, upset, and she comes straight to me. Mom, so and so is, and what I've been starting to say to her is, did you talk to her about it? That's my
So
first
good.
response. Like, I don't care what it is that she comes to me about. And she'll say no. And I'll say, well, why don't you go have that conversation with her first?
Mm.
And then if you need me, then you come and let me know. And she'll fight me on it. And I just shut the conversation down with one sentence. I keep saying to her, friends can have hard conversations.
Mm. It's so good, babe. I'm laughing because it's so real. They do. They're like my kid the other day was like I'm laughing because he was like, so and so was mean to me. I think you and dad should call his parents. And I was like, yo, I don't want to talk to his parents.
Can
My
you imagine
parents like,
saying that to
what?
yours when you were
But
younger?
I'm literally like, that's your first response. Like, I would have been embarrassed that my mom was talking to
Totally.
other parents. And that's not their instinct. They're like, go fix it, make it better. And in
That's
the
right.
end, I think those parents told their kid to go make it right with my kid because he was like overly nice when I picked him up the next day. But you're right. Like, they've lost any of their negotiation skills or their like ability to be in the discomfort with one another. I was like, what? I have to go. Why do I have to talk to his parents? I didn't do anything.
You're like, that's punishment for me.
I'm like, I'm an introvert. Talk to your dad. Why do I have to talk about it?
Don't punish me because you got a fight with somebody.
Right? I was like, I don't think you
Well, we
understand.
showed like there was it New York Times article, remember I sent it to you a while ago that was showing that exact thing. They did a huge study of kids right now in the structured playtime. And
Mhm.
the biggest percentage of kids, what they said they wanted the most was to have unstructured playtime. And the way that they find that is being online. And so this study was
Right.
correlating the amount of time that kids are spending on their devices, right? And the reason why these kids, now that they're a little bit older and they're able to ask them about it, the reason why they're on their devices as much is because that's the only place where they feel like they can be doing something without their parents hovering 24/7. And so it's like, if you're not going to let me go outside and be unsupervised with my friends, you want me to sit here so you
Mm.
can see my physical body and think that I'm air quote safe, then I'll be unsupervised in these spaces with my friends. And that's how I'll do it because that's what I crave is to have some unsupervised time with my peers.
Ugh, I feel attacked. But this is good because I think this whole conversation is making me think a little bit. Because when you first told me that about your sister, I was like, oh, amazing. This is so good. But it's the mama in me that's like, I want you where I can see you. I want to make sure you're safe. Don't move, stay there. And that's not the
I
answer.
mean, look, am I going to be happy when my kids out, doing shots and having a field party at 14 like I was? No. But also, thank God I'm here and I survived it all. And also, like I was saying to you when we first started talking before we started recording,
Yeah.
I don't know what the middle ground is because, yes, I can look at it and say, like, the way that we binge drank was not healthy. I'm very clear on that. And I don't know how to say this. It kind of sounds crazy as I'm saying it out loud, but like, it wasn't all bad. Like, I had a lot of fun in my 20s. Like, there was a lot of partying, yes, but there were so many amazing experiences. And I have so many fun memories of like being out with my friends and being drunk and like raising hell. And okay, sure, we probably could have drank a little bit less doing it, but I don't know. Like, I don't want my kid to not have some of those experiences. Like, that to me sounds sad, really, because that sounds boring.
Is it wrong that like I also had fun? I also was ridiculous and I want none of that for my child. I'm
But what do
just
you
being
want for him, I
honest.
suppose? Like, what is his, again, like, I'm not saying you have to drink to have fun, right? Like, hear me, but that's why I keep saying I don't know what that middle ground is, right? Like, I'm very aware that we were in an extreme that I don't want for my kid, but it doesn't feel like the healthy thing is the other extreme. We know this.
This is why very rarely do I discuss parenting because I am not a parenting expert
I
and
know.
I don't know, I refer to the professionals often because this is not my strength and it's like the hardest thing for me.
Remember when I told you that we were so excited because where we are in Costa Rica, there's a bus? And you were like,
Girl,
hell no, like
can
my
I
kid's
tell
not gonna ride a
you?
bus.
I saw a reel that was like, I started to send it to you, and then I was like, "Don't do that," but it was like a horror story on us, and I
Of
was like,
course.
"Don't even send it to her."
Of
But
course
I
there's
was
horror
like,
stories.
I sent
But
it to my child's father, though, and I was like, "He will never."
see, but again, like there for me, there's a part of this that's like it's an initiation. Like there's something about you have to get on this bus with all of these kids. You got to figure out like you have to navigate the feeling of like I don't know anybody. I have to ask somebody if I can sit by them. I have to feel rejection. I have to like learn to play the social
Mhm.
rules. I have to like there's something in that that I think is character building, right? And again, like I don't find that a lot of our kids are getting thrown into those kind of experiences anymore because we have such control over every moment that they are engaged with another kid. And so I'm like, yeah, girl, like get on that bus and figure it out. But then here's the funny thing. I brought her home and I'm sure our listeners will chuckle at this. Junie B. Jones. Do you remember the books, Junie B. Jones, when you were a kid? So there was these little chapter books, right? And I forgot about this. So I got her a bunch of the chapter books because she's at that age where we're doing chapters together. And the very first Junie B. Jones is Junie B. Jones and like the no good, stupid, smelly bus or something like that. And I was like, uh-oh. And Logan looks at me, she's like, oh, why is it so stupid and smelly? I was like, shit, I guess I'm shooting myself in the foot reading you this book. She was like, Mom, is this what buses are like? And I'm like, a little bit.
Uh, oh, see, that's my girl. She's gonna be like, "I don't want to. It'll mess with my outfit." I know my
And we're
girl.
like, well, then you
She's
better
gonna be
walk.
like, "No, my
I'm not driving your ass to school
I'm
every
like,
day.
Auntie D's Auntie
You
Dene's
can
on the
move
way.
here and
I'm
drive
gonna
her
like
ass.
be down there. I'm like, come on, baby girl, you're not gonna get on that bus. Come with me. I got you.
Get
But see,
on
this is
there.
why
Like,
kids need that other parent or on TV because like my kid knows you will be the tough love and I will be the like, no, have the 14th popsicle. Just be
you need
comfortable.
some like social chops, and you don't get your social chops by sitting in your room on your iPad. And look, my kid's a screen kid too. I have no shame. Like, I don't let people come for me about that shit. Like, I'm not interested in mom shaming. And also, I'm like, it's, we got to get you some tough skin here a little bit. Like, how do we exist in the world without it? I don't know. Anyway, we're not
This is
parenting
why
experts, y'all.
I surround him with other people that are better equipped. He's not gonna get it from me. I know.
We're all
It's not
different.
my strength, but it's okay. I'm not
Listen,
supposed
we
to be
can end
strong at
on this,
everything.
the importance of that communal parenting,
That's all I'm
right?
saying.
And this is what it is because when we had 10, 12, 15 other, aunties, uncles, cousins, all these things, like they were getting different perspectives and different types of parenting from everybody. And now also they've got one, maybe two primary attachment figures. And that's not actually the way we were meant to be raised.
Not to mention the village that we had when we were growing up, because when I was drunk
Mhm.
and someone saw me, they would call my mom and
They
be
would
like,
take care.
"Dene is out of control.
That's
Come
right.
get your child."
We had
But yeah.
people holding our hair and driving us home in the cabs and like making sure we got upstairs to our room, right? And
That's
so
it. We had a lot of safety nets that were surrounding us as well, like other people's parents that were like, "Listen, just call me. I'll be the parent you won't get in trouble with," right? And
that's
I
right.
think a lot of that's important to have too, like all these reasons we need a village.
Mm. Well, I'll keep you guys posted on my kid getting on the bus.
Oh my god, I'm like, I might have to make a trip down to Costa Rica to put a stop to this.
Everywhere
When does
else
it
in the
start?
country does buses
When
today.
does
It is
this
an
start?
LA thing.
Those roads are really rough down there. I have so many issues with this.
Yes, it's great. Remember how fun it was for us to like time the bumps and then jump with the seat and your
She's
ass
gonna
would
get
get
car
thrown
sick.
into the air?
Not my Lolo. No, I don't
You'll
like
have to
this.
puke in front of people. It'll be embarrassing. She'll
Oh
have
my
to figure it out.
god. I don't like this. We'll discuss this further.
To be continued.
All right, y'all.
Have a good one.